Well, when you hear the word Pizzagate, most people instantly think of the 2016 internet frenzy, hacked emails, John Podesta leaks from WikiLeaks, the mainstream media trying to spin it as if it was focused around a DC pizza shop, which ended in violence. But of course, that wasn't true. The pizza shop was cover for the bigger story of elite networks using coded language like pizza and hot dogs to arrange for abuse of underage children. Jeffrey Epstein was real. The trafficking was real. And in the newest tranche of Epstein documents, the word pizza is referenced tons of times. Some perhaps about food, others clearly about having their way with young girls. Code word pizza. One journalist 10 years ago who was fearlessly reporting on Pizzagate was journalist Ben Swann. He was one of only a few mainstream TV people at the time who was willing to ask any questions at all on air about Pizzagate. And he paid a professional price for it, of course. So after losing his career in mainstream media and with the newly released Epstein files, Ben Swann is vindicated. Here was his report from just a few days ago. Watch.
Anyone who dared to suggest that this might be true was blacklisted, shadow banned, or thrown off of social media. But then, just days ago, the largest dump of Epstein files revealed what some of us have been telling you for a decade, that Pizzagate is real. Not that there is a pizza parlor at the center of a child trafficking ring, but that child trafficking rings run by some of the most powerful people in the world do exist.
Ben Swann is kind enough to join us now on the show. Great to have you here, Ben.
Guys, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Well, they came after you fast.
Yep.
What was the moment? Maybe just take us back and just kind of unpack this. And I want to get your meta-analysis of where we are now with the new documents. But
Sure.
What was the moment then where you realized, like, oh, they're not just criticizing this report about the pizza shop. They're trying to destroy me, Ben Swann.
Well, I knew that within about 30 minutes of getting into work the day after the report aired. So the report aired at 11 o'clock at night, CBS in Atlanta. And the next day when I came into work, all of a sudden, I'm the first thing that happens, I'm called into general manager's office, sits me down and says, what the hell did you put on television last night? And so we start talking about the report, which, by the way, had been vetted in the newsroom. It had been signed off on by the senior most news people in the building. I didn't go rogue. I mean, everyone had seen this thing. They knew I was working on it for over a month. And so, but then it was all the reaction. It was the reaction from Washington, D.C. We had lawyers calling us. We had lobbyists calling us. We had CBS Network calling and saying, what are you guys doing down there? How could you put this on air? And so there was this frenzy around it. And then immediately they said, listen, here's the deal. You're either going to take all of your social media and turn it all off, or you're fired today. Right. And I'm like, well, I mean, I guess you can fire me, but there's no cause for firing me. It didn't violate any rules. It didn't do anything wrong. And actually, the reporting stands up. There was so much we could have talked about in that Pizzagate story that's not covered if you watch the whole thing. I mean, there were so many deep things we could have gotten into. This was just a very surface level because it was airing on broadcast television. And as you guys know, there are certain rules that you have to follow. You can't show a lot of the Instagram stuff. You can't show a lot of pictures. And so we were very careful in what we did. But even what we did share was so shocking and alarming that all of a sudden, it was this thing's coming down and all your social media has got to go away. And that's what happened for a year.
Now, I'm curious about the way that you might observe the way mainstream media today is covering this. They're not touching Pizzagate, even still. The way they cover even the Bondi hearings yesterday, our local news was like, well, they did say Lex Wessner. They just said it. Let's move on. Not who is he? That's, it's Valentine's Day weekend. Yeah. Maybe you want to rethink Victoria's Secret. How about all that? Like, it's so ignorant and purposely diversive. And as someone who tried to tell the truth, you must feel very vindicated, but also pissed. If you're like me, I'm pissed.
Well, not really pissed or vindicated, to be totally honest with you, because I knew from the day that I did the story that it was true. I really struggled with whether or not to even release the story at all. I had talked with my wife about it at the time, and she and I went back and forth. She did not want me to release it. I wanted to. She was like, they're going to come after us if you do this. And we actually took it to our pastors and said, if you guys could read through this script in advance and pray about us, let us know what you think. And I basically agree. Whatever they say, if they say this is too risky, don't do it, then I won't. They actually came back and said, no, we think that you have to, right? You can't not report on this. And so then, of course, we had a lot of backlash as a result of it. And to watch all that happen, look, I went through a lot, lost my job eventually because of it, was never able to work in mainstream news again. But all of those things ended up being huge blessings. So I'm not really angry about any of it. I think the disappointment for me is that over the course of those 10 years, how many more children were trafficked? How many more kids' lives were destroyed? How many more families were destroyed because the truth, when it was in front of the public and able to be seen on an internet level, really that technologically for the first time people could really dig into this stuff, was ignored so that this could continue. Not so that people wouldn't go to jail for what they had previously done, but also so that they could continue to act this way with impunity. And it went on for another 10 years.
Right. And it's still happening, as people in our chat room are pointing out, and we've said it here on the show, that this is active, right? This is the New York Times.
There's no evidence it's not. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, there's no evidence that it has stopped. The only thing I think is interesting, you know, I know you guys had Liz on your show yesterday, and I was listening to that, and she and I actually did a live stream together last week and agree on this point, that if you look through those Epstein emails, if you go back to the Podesta emails of Pizzagate, the terms of pizza and hot dog, the terminology that was used actually disappeared after 2016. You'll see a sharp drop. And I think it's because of the fact that people like myself and Liz exposed the terminology. Again, it wasn't new terminology, and it wasn't exclusive to Podesta or to Epstein or to anyone in their circles, right? This is stuff that since 2007, the FBI had memorandum on saying this is how pedophiles communicate with each other on Tor browsers and on the dark web, and this is how they communicate. Chat rooms, they use this coded language. Well, all of a sudden, after 2016, 2017, they're not using that language anymore. And what I keep trying to emphasize to people is it's not because they stopped. They just changed tactics. They just shifted how they were communicating.
Right.
And so now we have to relearn the language, I guess, to figure out where they are and what they're doing.
Right. I mean, these rats run into other holes now, and now it's incumbent upon investigative journalists like yourself to ferret this out and track them. I just want to put this up on the screen here. Take a look at this, Ben. So you worked at CBS, right? CBS News. It was an owned and operated station in Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? So CBS corporate was
owned
called
by Meredith at the time.
Oh, Meredith. Okay. Yeah. So just if you look today, I mean, this is CBSNews.com right now. Of course, the main focus is Savannah Guthrie's mom, right? There is zero mention on CBS News here about anything Epstein related. More top stories. No, nothing about Epstein. Nothing about Epstein. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me. And honestly, the truth is it doesn't even matter, right? Because CBS is a failed organization. ABC, NBC, they're failed news organizations. People don't go to their news for them anymore. The number one news app in the world, you guys know what it is. It's X. That's where everybody goes to get their news. And so it doesn't even matter. The mainstream news organizations aren't just to the point now where they're dinosaurs. They're extinct. They're printing for themselves and people who live on the Upper East Side of New York. The American public, the global public, is not getting their news and their information from them. And that's why I think when you go on, and I'm sure it's true in your feeds as well, when you go on X, what do you see? Every single post is Epstein. The administration's working very hard to try to change the subject on this, and they want to move on from it for various reasons. But I would say it's impossible, right? Because if you look at how the news cycle is being driven on X versus how it's being driven in any other place, it's pretty incredible to see that the public and content creators are not letting this thing go. And as a result, we're actually seeing so much more information come out every single day because people are digging in. You mentioned 911 times, right? Pizza was mentioned. Well, the latest thing we're working on, I'm actually releasing a report about this today, is on the cannibalism part of it, which was a very small part of the original Pizzagate story, but now we see it kind of prevalent in the Epstein files. Jerky is the term they seem to be using in the Epstein files, but jerky itself comes up over 311 times in the Epstein files. Who talks about jerky this often? And with, again, winky faces and little, one-liners, and Jeffrey's furious because he's out of jerky. Can you bring him some? And he's having jerky flown to him constantly in these emails. I mean, if the guy has such a hankering for beef jerky, it's not that hard to get. Why is it require specialized people flying to you and to your island in order for you to access jerky? So we're really looking into that. But I got to tell you, that is where this story, for a lot of people, is almost impossible to digest, because we go from child sex trafficking for 10 years was hard for people to imagine. I think most of the public has accepted on some basic level that this was in fact happening. But then when you start to say, but that also includes not just sex trafficking, we're also talking about torture and children who are caged and locked up and cannibalism. We're talking about emails that discuss breeding programs to breed children to put them on the black market, right? The level of depravity and satanic ritualism that is involved in this, it may take another 10 years for the public to be able to actually accept that this is real. But these are the people, the most powerful people in Western society.
Yeah, can I just say one other on the word thing? Because something I've been looking into, and maybe Ben, you can run with this as well. I've just been looking into this and very curious that the word muffin keeps coming up. Mm-hmm. It's very strange. Mm-hmm. So I started going through all of these emails where they're talking about muffins, and Jeffrey's angry. You know, he's back to eating muffins now. He's back to eating muffins. I'm going to fly some muffins in for you. Like, it's just so, no one talks like this. It's just so strange. No. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. It's just, that's when you're talking about the jerky and now muffins and like, what other words aren't we even thinking of that we need to run a search on?
Well, that was actually my exact question. I was surprised when Liz said yesterday, these are known code words. They have been for a long time. And of course that makes sense because drug dealers use code words. And of course that's the FBI's job and the CIA to decode them so that they know right now. They have to know what the new code words are. We don't. Will it be another decade before we find out? That's the part that's so infuriating. I guess that's not a question, but I'll let you respond.
Well, no, I think there is a question in there. And I would say it's difficult to know whether or not the FBI would know what some of these are. Because again, if we're talking about since Pizzagate, and if people like Epstein and his circle and people like Wexner and the people who are in these circles who were discussing, you know, child sex trafficking and child pornography and the assault of children using pizza words, and they suddenly say, hey guys, we can't talk this way. Do they invent their own? One of the reasons that the FBI was able to do this is because there are many different kinds of networks that are involved in child trafficking and human trafficking. We all know that, right?
Right.
And so those networks operate, you know, you'll have some which will be the 4chan, 8chan guys who are on Tor browsers sharing videos back and forth. That's a very different crowd than the people that Epstein's dealing with. He's not dealing with the guy who's in his basement, you know, in Virginia someplace, who's sending something to overseas. That's not who he's dealing with. He's dealing with a very different group. They're all using the same language because this became established language at some point. But after Pizzagate broke and after their codes were out in the public, did different groups isolate themselves and begin to create their own language that's not in the broader lexicon that the FBI would be able to tap into? And I think there's a very strong possibility it's not. That the terminology that Epstein would be using, whether it's, again, jerky or this word muffin, may not show up in other places. So there actually may not be an already established point of why are they using this word? And so it may take decoding through the emails, but also hopefully at some point arrests and conversations with these men who are involved in this and women who are involved. By the way, I'm also a little frustrated with the fact that we keep talking about all the men. It's not just men. If you look at these emails, even within the small number of unredacted names we've seen, Epstein had a circle of women around him, including Ghislaine Maxwell, but others who were recruiting girls and who were abusing girls and who were moving them through these networks. So it is a group of men and women who were deeply involved in this. And did they create their own language, and how do we discover that? So it is a process.
Right, and even like the women who were actively bringing the women, the masseuses from Turkey and from the spa to Epstein Island and facilitating all of that. You're absolutely right about that. Can I just ask you a journalism question here? And you don't have to reveal sources or anything. I'm just curious, in that month that you were grappling with releasing this story and you were talking with your wife and your pastor and everything, the story we were being told publicly was one thing, but obviously you were dealing with sources behind the scenes and working on this story deeply. Was there like a moment or a few moments where you said, oh my God, this is real? This specific point stood out that you included in your report that validated it for you from a journalism perspective?
Yeah, there were two things that happened. One was I was able to get in touch with self-proclaimed pedophiles who were operating on 4chan and 8chan, who were the ones who first flagged Podesta's emails. Right? The John Podesta emails that discuss pizza did not get flagged because people on the internet said, he sure mentions pizza a lot. Wonder if that has to do with child pornography. It wasn't. It was self-proclaimed pedophiles on 4chan and 8chan who started messaging and saying, has anyone noticed that in the WikiLeaks dump of John Podesta's emails, he's using the language we use? That's how we talk. So I was able to get in touch with some of those guys and communicate with them about the language they use and why they use it. You know, cheese pizza, CP, child pornography. It's the acronyms is how it originated. And that's what they originally
must have been.
That's what CP comes from.
Yeah.
Then once they had established that one, all the other words, whether it's sauce, hot dog, just pizza in general, those words all came out of the original, right? So then they use those based on anatomy and all that.
Wow.
But once I had that, do you completely trust that? No. Well, obviously you're talking to some of the most depraved people and deviants. He had no reason to lie, but do you trust it fully? No. But then the next step, and where it really was, this is absolutely real, was when I was able to then go back and verify through 2007, and I'm the first person to ever put this on television, the 2007 FBI unredacted, unclassified documents that not only showed the use of this language, but also the actual symbols, the boy lover, girl lover symbols, pedophile symbols that existed. And what we started to find were different bands that were incorporating these symbols into their music or into the pizza places that were in question. It was in their logos. That's not coincidental, right? That you start to see all these things connecting. And you guys know, from a journalistic perspective, you go into a story never expecting to know what the outcome is if you're going to actually follow a story, but you follow it wherever it takes you. And when you start to go down those roads and everything is clicking, it makes sense at a certain point. You say, you can second guess yourself and say, this can't be real. But if it looks like it, smells like it, walks like it, talks like it, at some point you have to just put it out and say, this is where it is. Prove me wrong. Show me where it's wrong. And one of my big conclusion in that original story 10 years ago was, at the end of the day, law enforcement has not investigated it. That's the biggest frustration. And by the way, that's where we are again. The
Right
Epstein
now.
files.
Right now,
No one's investigating it.
Covering it up, and then calling Thomas Massey, theatrical, or calling him a Trump derangement syndrome instead of actually investigating this. Yeah, it's incredibly infuriating. You had a question.
Leon Black, who is the head of Apollo, that massive firm, right? He comes up in those Epstein files multiple times, talking about, having accused of having sex with 16-year-olds and then girls as young as 7 and 8, and that he had used toys and caused bleeding. I mean, it's very graphic stuff.
Yeah.
Why is he not right now being questioned by the FBI? Why is he right now not sitting in a room being interrogated and being charged? Because I understand some of this stuff is very old stuff. I don't know what the statute of limitations are on it. I don't know how much evidence there is, but there's a lot of evidence that would at least require you to go and sit him down and to interrogate him. And nothing's happening. It doesn't matter if the names are redacted or unredacted at this point. Les Wexner, who's coming after this guy? Who's interviewing him today? It's not happening. And that's the biggest problem. And I just want to point out, for anybody who thinks, that Thomas Massey's grandstanding when Pam Bondi says, there's 3,000 emails with Lex Wexner's name. You found one that wasn't unredacted. The one he found that wasn't unredacted was the most important document out of those 3,000.
Yes. The word co-conspirator.
The FBI said he's a co-conspirator.
Very important, I would say. I lost it over that. Here's something that's new to me also. I think a lot of this was scrubbed from the internet around the time your report was too, was the bit about Wayfair. Ordering Wayfair furniture. Specifically, there's one in which Jeffrey Epstein orders Wayfair furniture to the house of Woody Allen. Now, Wayfair is known for affordable, cheap furniture. I didn't think billionaires sent each other cheaper furniture items like this.
Wicker
And
love
so
seats.
the theory is that these are pieces of furniture that contain humans for the purposes of trafficking. Have you been able to validate that? What do you know about that that's new to me?
Well, the story, it was a little bit after Pizzagate. It was probably like 2018, 2019 when Wayfair scandal broke. So the concept was that Wayfair would be cheap furniture, and it was, cabinets and dressers, things like that. But suddenly there would be one or two items that would show up on Wayfair's website for ridiculous pricing. Like you think you're on Restoration Hardware, right? It's like it would be a file cabinet or a closet, like portable closet, for $26,000, for $35,000. And people started saying, why does Wayfair, everything else is like $299. Yeah. And then they have like a $30,000 wicker cabinet. And so the theory began that they were actually putting kids in these because they would also name them. And then people started matching like missing kids' names to the names of these products. Is there any evidence that any of this is true? No. I have not found any evidence that Wayfair was involved in human trafficking, was trafficking kids, had kids in those cabinets. There's no proof of it. However, it got a whole bunch of renewed interest because, as you pointed out rightly, Natalie, all of a sudden, you find out Jeffrey Epstein ordered an $8,000 cabinet and sent it to Woody Allen.
Yeah.
From Wayfair.
Woody Allen's a good guy.
Right.
He's good.
Right.
No, and Soon Yi is here thanking him for the update. Like, okay, we're going to be eating outside. We need this outdoor furniture.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you. They couldn't get it any other way.
You had to get it from Jeffrey Epstein.
It had to come from Jeffrey Epstein, and it came from Wayfair. Again, this is where so the clever part of what they've done over the course of these many years is they have been committed to their coded language and committed to kind of hiding things in plain sight, because you sound like a crazy person when you're like, Wayfair is shipping children around the world to pedophiles, right? They're being used in this way. That sounds crazy. But and I'm not saying they are, for the record, but when you suddenly see that, in fact, Jeffrey Epstein was buying Wayfair furniture at ridiculously high prices and shipping it to known pedophiles, because he himself was a known pedophile, and then sent it to Woody Allen, who's a pedophile, and you all of a sudden see this happening, you say, am I the crazy one for asking the question? Am I crazy for thinking this is real?
Right, and then they'll gaslight you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine just accidentally ordering like a really expensive piece of furniture from there, and it shows up, and they're like, actually, you're not part of the program, so we can't actually make this delivery to you.
And then the question is, has anybody at Wayfair been interviewed by the Justice Department?
Right.
Yeah.
Has the Justice Department ever bothered to look? And listen, if I'm in the FBI and somebody calls me and says Wayfair is shipping kids around in wicker closets, I'd be like, that's okay. No, next. Let's move on to the next thing. But to your point, Clayton, and actually this would make sense if you were doing this, in that the people, not disparaging anyone, but the people who shop on Wayfair will never accidentally buy a $26,000 cabinet.
Right.
Yeah,
because you're shopping on
that's
Wayfair
the brilliance
because
of
you
it.
can't afford a $26,000 cabinet.
Yeah.
So if you were, again, hiding kids in Restoration Hardware furniture, you might accidentally send the kid to the wrong person. But in this case, pretty good chance that the only people who are going to buy the ridiculously priced product on Wayfair know what they're buying.
Right.
If that
Great
were
point.
what's happening.
Look, the Justice Department picks up on weirder things. There was a whole documentary on how they prosecuted the McDonald's monopoly scandal. Like, that's not crazy. That was from an anonymous tip, and it turned out to be a real thing. So, children inside cabinets.
Yes.
Maybe just follow the trail. If it's cold, it's cold, but look into it, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is the biggest issue, is there is no case file on any of this stuff.
Yeah.
There's still
so
no
incurious.
case file in the FBI on Pizzagate.
No, they'd rather go after Catholics. Honestly, that's what you're dealing with. The Obama-Biden years in the FBI. And by the way, is something we've talked about with our friend of the show, Kyle Seraphin. The rot is still deep inside of the FBI. You might have Dan Bongino and a few of these other people that go in there. The whole thing is just rotten. right? It needs to be completely leveled and brought down to the ground. So they don't have any interest in. They've been helping to facilitate all of this. It's been run through the State Department for crying out loud.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all
To me, that's what's so
through deep state. It is.
Go ahead, Philip.
What's so damn frustrating to me, and just like is, it's not like people are asking them to go. I mean, yes, go back and investigate these crimes that happened, but this is still ongoing. Like in protecting the people that are named, those people are still operating business as usual.
Yeah.
So, like in not investigating these people, they're perpetuating it.
Like Tara Rodas,
sure.
Yes.
friend of the show, Tara Rodas, who's a Health and Human Services whistleblower, I think HHS, yeah, and she, blew the whistle exactly on these operations of ferreting these children around the United States for this illicit trade, and it's still happening right now under Trump. Like, it's still going on because these NGOs and all of it, the billions of dollars, and I guess that's who we're protecting right now, Ben. I mean, that's why you lost your job, for asking these questions and doing real journalism.
Well, yeah, and as you pointed out, it takes on a lot of different forms. There's a whole set of investigations that need to happen over Haiti when the Clinton Foundation got involved there, and a lot of kids went missing at that time. The John of God, he comes up in the Brazilian guy that was Oprah's guru for a while. Remember this guy? He was apparently running kids through Zorro Ranch, Epstein's Zorro Ranch. That's all in these files as well. We see so many different avenues through which this is all happening. And again, who's investigating any of it? And I know you said, like, you see people like Bongino and Patel. I mean, Kash Patel has been probably the biggest disappointment as FBI director that he possibly could have been on this issue, because he talked about this issue a lot before becoming FBI director. And
Big
so
time.
I think people like me had a lot of hope that, look, so you're going to get Kash in there and he's going to go after these people. And then he just denies it's even happening. So it makes you wonder, too, that there is a level to this that we're not understanding. There is a deeper level than just powerful people that is paralyzing. I think otherwise good people who have gotten into those spots who just, they don't even know what to do with it, so they just pretend it's not happening. And I don't know how you can go to sleep at night pretending it's not happening.
Right. As David Icke pointed out on our show a few weeks ago, I mean, it's all being run by this really nefarious cabal that's way bigger than all of these people. Jeffrey Epstein is not, he's just
He was not
tiny
the ringleader.
piece of it. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, absolutely.
Ben Swann, great to have you on the show for the first time. I can't believe our schedules have never aligned to have you on, but we'd love to have you back and continue the great work. And God bless you for the work that you're doing to try to expose all of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.